then we'll let the panel kind of contribute this way. Unfortunately, you know. So yeah, we'll have you and you Rex. Yeah.
So really quick question about caliphates. What would you say would be an example of a successful caliphate? Because if you start with Russia doing, there's 2 assassinations and civil war. And then if you go down another 100 years, there's the Umayyads, and that's all on one monarchy from Muawiyah to Marwan II. So what would you say is an actually successful implementation of caliphate?
What does successful mean?
Successful would mean something where we can draw lessons to apply to today.
You can always apply lessons from anything.
Well, for example, you would say if you look at nation states today, there are certain nation states where you would say they've done it better than others. So you would say that the way America, for example, you would say that.
We can't hear.
Sorry.
You raise your voice.
We would say that, for example, Indonesia would be different to the nation state that ISIS is trying to create, for example. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Okay, we can.
Sorry, listen to her.
Is it okay if we'll answer after 3? We had somebody up here. You
Yeah. So my question is, as the world moves towards, is run more by corporations, and capitalist ideals, if you like, where the reality is towards a person getting richer and people getting poorer, and left and right kind of become merged into serving one kind of ideal. Where can we have this discussion, as you keep saying, without getting clamped down, without getting criminalized? Where do we kind of plan this overthrow of the old world order without getting criminalized? And, as we kind of, America, you have Donald Trump moving towards this Nazi Germany kind of situation for Muslims. Where can we have that discussion without becoming criminalized? Where do we go? Because it's just becoming harder and harder.
Thank you. And we had one other question from it was yourself, no? The lady at the back, no? Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks. So I can't remember which one of the great panelists said libertarianism is what they thought, I think it was you, was what they thought was the flavour of sort of Islamic polity. Of sorts. So I'd like to hear from any of you on if you support this, does it fall under economic libertarianism or does it fall under social libertarianism, I guess?
Do we have a sister who has a question? There isn't a sister who wants a question. Okay, I'll let the panel comment first on what is a successful caliphate, 2, the capitalist notion, and 3, libertarianism question. Starting with Cyrus, please.
You had a very difficult question. I liked it, but a difficult question. Well, of course, we draw from the earliest examples. Of course, we benefit a lot from, especially the Caliphate of Oman. There's much instructive in the, I guess you could argue, the Caliphate. Someone would call it the Imamate, right? Ali ibn Abi Talib, for sure. Afterwards, I appreciated that Dr. Ali mentioned the Sokoto Caliphate, founded by Uthman Dan Fodio. That, for me, has been very instructive. I live in Turkey now, and so I'm surrounded by reminders of the Ottoman experience as well, and try to take the good and leave the bad. And actually, I had a question that I wanted to pass on. Maybe we'll take it up after the panel about expansionism and its role. But I would say what I've learned from them, and to probably point back to the question, I guess to move towards the question posed by the brother, and maybe I'll touch on this as well, is that moving forward, I hope that Muslims won't wait on an imaginary global unity, because let's be real, that's ridiculous. But that as small communities, local communities, we can come together around common goals, and those communities don't necessarily have to be even united in Islam. We can have a pluralism that still agrees on common goals, common ethics, and organize around them. And that in those, in the same way that Medina I don't see as a as a state necessarily, but as a village, as an enlightened village, as a model society that can be scaled up, that can be expanded if necessary and when necessary. That within those communities, that we create the models, right, for which are not based on policing. And I think when I think of libertarianism, and I appreciate the word actually, I don't think it's wrong. That what I find in the prophetic practice is not the policing of the streets, is not the policing of people's personal behaviors. While we are clear about what is forbidden to the practicing Muslim, it is not something that the state takes a role in, many of them at least. And I'm half Iranian as well, and one of my gripes with them is the policing of clothing, the policing of alcohol and things like this. This is a big problem, I think, and not necessarily Islamic, although they have their own approach to these issues. I think that in our community, starting from our masajid, we can create rather than focusing on policing people, we can create models for charity. How do we marshal our resources, making sure that people have what they need in terms of food, in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, and then worry about security and how do we protect ourselves as a community so that when the state does clamp down, when we do have to deal with the state that thinks that they own us, we have some model, we have some internal unity, and then building that coalition, and I appreciated the potential for a coalition of emirates, perhaps, that allows us to work together, despite the fact that we don't necessarily have one common figurehead. This is really, especially as Muslims in the West and as Muslims in the United States, and our numbers are not at the same percentage as that of Muslims in England, I have been arguing for a pursuit of this somewhat limited autonomy, right? That we start thinking of ourselves and that we revisit the negotiating table with the state, not as citizens and individuals in front of that state, not as individual voters, but as communities that have very simple goals, that imagine ourselves as part of a global unity. Sure, we want them to end the wars and free the captives, but we're meeting them, with those goals in mind, and after that it's or else. This is a limited answer that tries to touch on a few different things. And again, that's probably my last word for the night, so I want to thank everybody else.
Brothers and sisters, unfortunately we're short of time and there is another lecture in here now. I just